All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Plain Sports. I believe this is episode 31 or 32. Who knows? You guys are keeping track better than we are. So hopefully you guys are enjoying what's been coming out recently. We just uploaded a Hoot app for this week and that is the last of the off season as we're going into football week. Since it is football time in Oklahoma, today's video is going to be about any roster updates that we've heard. Today is September 1st, so there were a couple big news stories that came through today. And we'll do a game preview for Tulane, talk about some big guys that they expect some production from, and then what Oklahoma is probably going to end up doing to them. And we'll do a little gambling hit at the end and see what if we can predict some things at Vegas. Things might happen. Things would happen. So let's just get right into it. So two biggest things that came out today is Theo Weiss was injured today. It seems to be a foot injury. The severity, from what I understand, is still unknown, but we'll probably sideline him for this week's game against Tulane. And then Andrew Raym is believed to have come down with COVID, still unconfirmed, but it has been mentioned in a couple news sources. So he will more than likely miss this week's game as well, if that is true, and potentially next week, just depending on protocol and probably negative testing and all that stuff. What do you guys think? Is this going to affect the Sooners big time in the next couple weeks?
They're both
Go ahead, Brian.
unconfirmed, which is the good news, I guess. The scary thing is you said foot for Theo Weiss. I've seen as bad as potentially a torn ACL, which that would have long-term impacts on the Sooners without a doubt. He's a guy that's probably going to be, their 2 or 3 receiver, depending on how the season goes. But he's definitely a guy who has, he was going to have a pretty big role in the Sooners offense this year, especially with the running backs they've been losing lately. The offense has taken a little bit of a hit, unfortunately, going into the season. I don't think Raym's thing, if it is the vid, is going to be too negative long term. Just because, say he does have the vid, and even if he does miss 2 games, he's going to miss Tulane and Western Carolina. And no offense to those teams, but I think we can steamroll them with our 3rd and 4th stringers. It's just the way it is. What scares me the most is Theo Weiss. I hope it is a foot, like you just said, and it's not something that, maybe it sidelines him for 3 or 4 weeks, which would still suck. But still, those 3 or 4 weeks are going to be cupcake games. So hopefully we get him back to the thick of our schedule. My biggest concern is definitely with Theo Weiss, especially if it is a knee injury or potentially a torn ACL.
Yeah. I mean, it's going. I'll start with Raym. I mean, really the big deal with him is it's really not the Sooners as a whole. It's more for him personally, because in the depth chart, you've got Congo or Raym listed as the starter. And if he's really going to be out, so he's going to, I don't know if he's vaccinated or whatever the protocols are. I don't keep up with it, but he's definitely probably going to miss this week if he does actually have it. And if Congo plays well, he's probably going to start against Western Carolina. And basically, the way I'm looking at this depth chart is if there's multiple starters outside the receiver position, it's basically going to be a 3-game audition for the rest of the season. So if Raym's not available for a game or 2 and Congo plays well, I don't think Raym's going to see the field unless, barring injuries or poor play. So I think from a personal perspective, the greatest asset to athletes is your availability. And it might bite them a little bit. Not that this is going to be detrimental to him long term, because Congo's a redshirt senior and he's going to be gone next year, even if he starts the whole year. But I'm not, it's a lot of up in the air. Now, as far as Theo Weiss goes, obviously, even if it's just a foot injury, I mean, that Liz Frank or whatever, however you say it, that's a full year injury as well. So it could be from a light sprain or a mild sprain all the way to a torn ACL, torn Achilles, whatever. I mean, it can go from 3 or 4 weeks all the way up to a full year. But with Jaden Hazelwood, he's going to have all the opportunities in the world now. And he's not going to have to look over his shoulder, most likely, as far as, people taking snaps from him. And I really think, Mario Williams is going to have to step up. Mike Woods, I really think, regardless of Theo Wee's status, I think Mike Woods is probably going to lead OU in receiving yards this year. That might be a hot take to some people, but I really think Mike Woods is that guy. And I really think he's been kind of going under the radar because he transferred in late. And I really think he's going to step up. And, like we've talked about, the receiving room at OU is, if there's one position we're going to lose some guys at, that one is it. Now, we lose another guy, that's when I could start to get a little bit worried. But, we just did that Houdat on Jalil Farouk. Could he start pushing for some playing time now? I don't know. If Theo Weiss is out for a full year, they're going to need to get a rotation guy in for Weiss, instead of Weiss. But
and we've still got Mims and Stoops, who Rattler obviously has a huge rapport with. He's very comfortable with those guys.
Yeah, and I don't think I totally forgot since we released the last video, but talking about the running back room. I mean, with that Trey Bradford saga. Jose, what do you think about that one? That seems bizarre.
I don't know. I saw it on Twitter at first, and it seemed like it didn't make sense. I didn't even know you could transfer in and then just change your mind and go back. I don't even know if it's been announced if he's for sure going back to LSU. I know that I saw that him and Eric Gilbert, who transferred from LSU to Georgia, they were pretty close while they were at LSU. So I don't know. It just doesn't make sense, right? Like, he was in such a hurry to leave LSU when he first entered the portal, and then it didn't seem, I don't know. It seems like he's a guy that doesn't want to compete. He just kind of wants things given to him potentially, because there's no, like, he was RB number 3 when he left after everything that was happening, and all he was potentially an injury away from being RB2.
You see what Lincoln Riley said about it? Like, that he was asked about his press conference yesterday, and he was like, I really wish I could tell you what happened there. Like, he's just as baffled, or at least, he's saying that he's just as baffled as we are, because he obviously would know if something were to, behind the scenes stuff's going down, but he seemed like he didn't understand it either. And I think he said, like, we swung, we missed on that one, but I really couldn't tell you guys what happened. It doesn't make much sense to me either.
Yeah, there's a lot of developing there, and I guess really just the running back room. We're gonna have to see. I mean, Jaden Knowles now, Weatherman Jay is gonna get some opportunities back there, but we'll see if also, one of our commenters said Jalil Farouk might play some at the running back in these non-conference games once it starts becoming a blowout.
And Todd Hudson's on the roster too. He's a walk-on that Lincoln said. I think Lincoln said that Todd Hudson and Weatherman Jay were going to play this season anyway for us, which, who knows how true that is. But now they're going to play for sure.
Yeah. I mean, now we're going to get to see probably a lot of combinations back there, especially during these first few games where blowouts are likely.
Every now and again if need be.
Yep.
Yeah. Never forget, what was it? Against Iowa State. Who was that? Was it Trey Miller? No, Dimitri Flowers, wasn't it? Dimitri that had 100 yards against Iowa State as a had to fill in. But I did see Lincoln come out and say that this year is going to be more of like a Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon workload for those guys. And so, which makes sense. I mean, Jaden Knowles looked great. I mean, as far as spring game goes, and, at the time he was 4th, 5th string. Now he's RB3.
I just forecasted 100-yard games.
Yeah. I just don't know what that whole Trey Bradford deal. I really don't understand. It's not like he was a big time deal at LSU. I mean, he had like 70 yards last year.
Yeah.
And I don't really know their depth.
Receiving touchdown.
Yeah. And I don't really know their depth at LSU, but I mean, they're a big school. I would imagine there's 2 or 3 guys in the mix there. He's not going to stroll back in and be like, okay, guys, I know we play this Saturday, but I'm coming back. So I'm ready to play.
He's young too, isn't he?
Redshirt sophomore, I thought,
sophomore,
or freshman, something like that.
20 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah, I think last year was his first year, so technically he's a freshman.
Is he from the Louisiana area? Maybe he got homesick or something, and he was just
he's from Dallas-Fort Worth.
Dallas-Fort Worth. Understand it then.
Yeah, the whole Trey Bradford saga is just really confusing, and obviously, like Lincoln said, he's confused. I think his exact words were, "We just swung and missed." Like, something happened, and no one understands it. But I guess good for him if he lands somewhere and does find the success he wants. But I don't think anyone can make sense of what happened there.
Well, and just last thing, long term thinking though, that with him gone, it makes it even more crucial to take a third running back in this upcoming class with Javante Barnes or whoever, if Barnes goes elsewhere. It seems like Barnes really likes the Sooners, but that adds even more pressure to take a third running back and hold on to him and actually sign him.
We also talk about I keep bringing Rickman Owens up just for some reason because and Bram, you keep saying Texas tees for sure Texas, and I mean you could be right, but I think he tweeted yesterday or 2 days ago his recruitment's still, or I think he tweeted like my recruitment 100% open with the emojis and all that. He keeps leaving the door open for other schools. I don't know how much he loves Texas. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, luckily, well, today, September 1st, was the first day that schools can officially contact that recruiting class. So maybe now that he gets to talk to coaches at OU, he'll feel more comfortable and like he said, open up to 100% of the schools that are interested in him. And he's going to be obviously a recruit that we're going to have to look out for over the next year and a half to see what he ends up doing. Hopefully he does become a Sooner, because the running back depth is going to be really, really tight once we get to 2023. But yeah. Let's move on to our game preview. So, with unfortunate weather situations and things that just can't be controlled with Hurricane Ida, we got a home opener in week 1, and
we're the away team.
In Norman, whatever. You know what I mean. Home opener. Is that so? We get 3 straight home games to start off the season.
4, right?
4? Do we have 4 straight home games? So great situation for the Sooner fans. You can travel to Norman if you have the ability to and watch the Sooners every Saturday. Unfortunate for Tulane, obviously. We hope everyone's safe in New Orleans, but they've been doing a lot of traveling. I know they were in the Alabama facilities to prepare for this game, and they'll be in Norman soon, if not already. But let's start with what their offense is going to bring to the game. So last year they had a true freshman quarterback. I can't recall his name right now, but he led the true freshman in
Michael Pratt.
Thank you. So he passed for 20 touchdowns. He led the true freshman in the entire country with passing touchdowns. He can carry the ball as well. So he's kind of a dual threat quarterback for him. And they do have a first-year OC in Chip Long, whose biggest accomplishment in his career so far was being the OC for Notre Dame back when they went undefeated and in the playoffs when they got absolutely demolished. And then he was immediately fired, unfortunately for him. But, he does have an undefeated record under his belt. And then they have a very talented running back that last year put in, so if I'm reading this correctly, 770 yards roughly. So
their leading running back last year was 773, but it was a clear 1-2. I was looking up their team earlier today with some numbers. They're a weird offense just from what I'm looking at. Obviously, you mentioned their quarterback led the nation for true freshman and touchdown passes. So obviously the dude's got a little bit of talent, and you said he could run a little bit too. And it's interesting his rushing numbers because he averaged 2 yards per carry. So that's obviously that's not great. He had 229 yards on I think 115 carries, but he had 8 touchdowns. So without watching any Tulane games and just looking strictly at the numbers, that would kind of make me think he's maybe like a, close goal line area quarterback draw type, maybe sneak. I mean, he's a big body guy, 6'2", 210. He can mix it up a little bit in there towards the goal line. But yeah, they lost their leading running back. Although, like I said, it was their leading running back at 773, their second running back at 741. So I assume the guy was 741, Cameron Carroll, who I believe is their best player in offense now, just looking at the numbers. He led the team in touchdowns last year with 13 total, 774 rushing yards. He had like 100 receiving yards. But then the receiver position was really interesting to me too, because they had 2 guys. Their leading receiver had 512 yards. Their second receiver was 425 yards. After that, the next closest is like 250. So it's a weird offense on paper. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Sooners are pretty much just going to get to the defense, they're gonna get a warm up game. Really, I mean, it's gonna be live game. They're not gonna know what's coming at them. I'm sure they've scrimmage and all that stuff, but they've seen what Lincoln's more than likely going to drop in practice. So these are going to be live bullets in a way coming at them, and we'll get to see how they react. How has this newer unit come together, and what's the season going to look like?
Yeah, in Tulane, their offense for last year with a true freshman quarterback, they averaged just under 35 points a game, and on offense averaged like 5.7 yards a play. So they're, granted they're playing in the American Athletic, but they're still an explosive offense because they might have I don't know who would be their now number 2 running back, but it seems like they're doing that whole same idea that OU is going to do: split the load on 2 people, and don't work someone too hard, and kind of split it amongst the 2 guys. And I'm sure they've got someone in the pipeline to do that. But 35 points a game with a true freshman quarterback, not that Tulane is going to really give OU a game, but it's not like they're only averaging like 17 points a game. This could actually be a decent. I mean, this is at least a team that could score a few times on the Sooners, compared to like Western Carolina.
Yeah.
You don't think Tulane in this game is going to score at least 14 points?
No.
I think 14's their max, but no. I do want to, ask you guys a question and see what you guys think. And right before that, it is notable to mention that like you said, their defense wasn't awful. They do have some explosive ability in them. They ranked 63rd in the country in total offense. And I mean, that means that they were better than Nebraska, Iowa, and Northwestern, and all those teams are pretty good teams in the Big Ten. So, but that being said, what do you guys think that this offense is going to challenge the most out of OU's defense? Line, DBs? Are we going to get linebacker? What could they potentially expose, I guess?
Their best player on the team, just looking at numbers again. I mean, I didn't watch a lick of their football games last year, but it's this Cameron Carroll kid. He was, he's now their leading rusher. He almost had 800 yards rushing. He averaged like 6 yards a carry, 13 touchdowns. I mean, the dude can find the end zone, obviously. And that third running back that Brum was talking about, since they lost their leading rusher, his name is Amari Jones. Little workload last year. Hold on, I got the stats right here. Only had 67 attempts, but he averaged 5.8 with those attempts and finished almost 400 yards. The receiving core doesn't scare me all that much. I mean, their 2 leading receivers last year had 500 yards and 400 yards and on 30 catches. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're going to be taken. I don't see them posing too much of a threat to our defensive backs. I don't know anything about their offensive line, but I imagine they're going to be undermatched against what we all believe is the best core unit of our defense, which is going to make everything harder for all those guys.
I would say most likely an area that would be where it would challenge the Sooners as a whole would be on the ground. I think the rushing attack, with the, their number 1 and their number 2 running back approach, they've got a somewhat mobile of a quarterback. I think it could be that'd be the test, but the deal is he might be running for his life too, the quarterback. I just don't know what their offensive line looks like. If it's halfway decent, which it has to be halfway decent if last year they averaged 35 points a game or just under or whatever, it has to be a decent line. So if they retain most of their line, they might be able to run the ball on the Sooners. Now, I know that's one of the strengths of the defense, but I also want to take into account that we're adding a few pieces in, with Jalen Redmond's kind of coming back, and then you've got a few guys that graduated. I just feel like that it could, and Ronnie Perkins if we were to put their
over under on 100 yards rushing for the game, what would you guys say?
For them,
as a team,
I think as a team they'll go over, especially if we think about it, right? They're, like I mentioned a second ago, their new offensive coordinator was the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, and the biggest criticism everyone had of them was they couldn't pass the ball, but their running game was pretty good at the time. So he's going to put running plays in.
I don't think they're, like you said, 35 is good, but I think they're going to be so undermatched that it's going to be so hard for them to do that.
and I don't want us to or not think about or not think this is a big factor. Ronnie Perkins is gone, and he was a leader. And as much as we didn't like and he drove us nuts, Bookie was too. And so you've got two guys on that defensive side of the ball that were leaders on the team that are gone. Not that Pat Fields is a good leader and he's obviously a captain now, but I think it's gonna take a little bit. I really think it's gonna take a game or two, and stadium's back. Stadium's gonna be back full. They're gonna be amped up. They're gonna be flying around trying to take their heads off. I just think it's going to take a little bit to get that natural leadership. I would imagine Nick Bonino is going to take his spot, Ronnie Perkins' spot. I'm sure Pat Fields is kind of taking Bookie's spot as well.
And Caleb Kelly, I mean, he's been there for a million years. He's going to have that voice on the field, on the sideline, everywhere.
That is true. I mean, yeah. So I think it's more of that they've got a decent offense. They can rush the ball. They're going to slow it down, try to eat as much clock as possible. They're not going to be as effective as Army was, 3 years ago. But I think they're going to try to slow the game down. They're going to try to grind it out. And it'll test the Sooners as far as being disciplined because they're a better team, not get frustrated or flustered.
The thing about Tulane is, they're not horrible. But if you look at their season last year, they went 6-5, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. They got beat pretty good in the Potato Bowl, famous Potato, Idaho, whatever it's called, to Nevada. Their two most impressive games on the season for me, looking at their, what they did is they're both losses. They lost an overtime game to, at the time, number 17 SMU, 37-34, and then they lost to number 25 Tulsa, 30-24, and also in overtime. They beat the brakes off of Southern Miss, but I think Southern Miss won like 3 games last year or 2 games last year. So it's not going to be a competitive game. I don't think it's going to be competitive at all.
Well, yeah. I'm not sitting here saying it's going to be competitive.
I think it's going to be.
I'm just saying
when they score, it'll be second half. And they might get like a lucky touchdown in the first half when the Sooners, because it's inevitable. Like, our guys are gonna either have a respect for them, like, want to take it easy at first, whatever. Like, we always see like top teams not take a team like the Tulane seriously, and then they get a surprise touchdown, and then you're like, oh shit, it's go time. Like, we can't let them just dummy us like this. Then they'll probably score, their second touchdown in the second half when we have our third stringers in the fourth quarter. But it won't be. I don't think either Brum or I think this is going to be nearly competitive, and that's something we'll kind of touch on later. But this is going to be a blowout.
What do you guys think of Tulane on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, so Tulane, when we were doing our research earlier, Brandon noticed they actually had a guy drafted in the 7th round of last year's draft, Patrick Johnson. He was drafted by the Eagles, I believe, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I think round 7, 234.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like a Sooner talent guy, but it is awesome that he got drafted, and he was their leading sack getter last year. And their next closest, who's still around, only had 4.5 sacks last year. He did total almost 100 yards, I believe, if I remember correctly. And he's a linebacker, so he's probably going to be flying around the field. I don't think they're going to get very much pressure.
100 tackles, right? Not 100 yards.
Yeah, 100 tackles. Sorry. So he almost, I think it's total, it was 97 to be exact. Yeah. And his name's Dorian Williams. So that's the best defensive player they have for this year. I don't know. What do you got, Brum? You want to?
Sorry. Yeah, Brum, you got it.
Brum, you want to kick it off there?
I mean, all I was going to say, last year they gave up about 28 points a game, and they're playing against the American Athletic talent. And they lost their best pass rusher. There's going to be too many weapons. I mean, they're going to give up 56 points, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the loss of Patrick Johnson. If you look at the team as a whole, last year they had 39 sacks, which is not. I mean, I don't think that's bad for 12 games. That's probably middle of the road, pretty average, maybe a little above average. I don't know. But the problem is that Patrick Johnson had 10 of them. So take that out. Now they're at 29 in 10 games. And I didn't even take the time to look at, if some of these guys with 2.5 sacks or half a sack or if they're gone now. But either way, they're losing a lot of production there. Dorian Williams, as we mentioned, is going to be the player to watch, if you will, for their defense. He's definitely, at least numbers wise, their most talented guy. Their leading interception getter last year had 3 interceptions, a safety out of Fort Worth. He's still there. Maybe he's, their best defensive back, but as you mentioned, bro, there's just, if they gave it 28 last year, there's too much firepower in the Sooner offense, even without the Elise, that it's 50, 60 points seems right.
Yeah. I mean, the one spot, that defensive line, I'm sure, they've got the guy who had 4.5 sacks last year. And, they probably have another guy or two that could actually pass rush that might be coming into his own. I think where this is going to come into is, the few spots that are like the or starters. You've got Swenson at left tackle or Anton Harrison. And then you've got Congle or Rain, which Rain might not be there. So Congle just might be there. And then what was it? Right tackle.
Right tackle is Tyrese Robinson.
Yeah, Rwanya.
Yeah.
So I think whoever they roll out for the actual first, instead of the, whenever they determine the ors and who actually goes out there, with the defensive line not being that great, if someone struggles, the leash is going to be short.
Yeah.
On the ones that are going to be like the ors. If Swenson goes out there and does what Swenson does and gives up a sack within the first quarter, he's getting benched. I don't think it's going to be long. They're not going to give many drives to correct it. If you give up a sack, or especially more than one against Tulane in that defensive line, you're getting benched.
Because the problem is, you mentioned the guy with 4.5 sacks. It wasn't a guy in the end. It wasn't a guy on the D-line. It was Dorian Williams, that linebacker who's still there. Yeah. So I don't know. Their leading rusher or their leading pass rusher on the defensive line side of the ball now. After Dorian Williams last year, it was 3.5. So at best, their best defensive lineman returning had 3.5 sacks last season.
Yeah. So
there's no room to mess that up.
Yeah, and I like you said, I think this game is going to have the shortest leash probably for the offensive line, and probably Western Carolina too. You just can't let these guys dummy you and get sacks on you. And Swenson, I think we all agree, is kind of notorious for his inconsistency. Like, he's got the talent, this dude just doesn't seem to show up every single play like we need him to, and like Coach B obviously wants him to. So I mean, hopefully that's something that he's been able to correct. If it was a mindset, a technique thing, he was able to correct it over the offseason. Going back, so what do you guys think is going to be, who do you think is going to be the player to watch here? Like, what position is going to be most exciting?
I was just about to ask that. I was going to ask, who's the player of the game offensively for the Sooners week 1 or against? I'm going to go Eric Gray. I just think there's so much hype around him, and I think he probably wants to solidify the number 1 spot. It's going to be a 1-2 punch all season. But I think if Eric Gray plays really well, he can make it like a 60-40 instead of 55-45 or 50-50. I think Eric Gray's going to have a huge game, obviously against a lesser opponent. But I'm predicting Eric Gray to have the best game for us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a solid choice, but I mean, like I said a little bit earlier, I really think Mike Woods is going to come in. He's going to prove that he's the number 1. And I think he's going to come in, play for a half, most likely, and can put up 100 yards. I think he'll have 100 yards tomorrow, or well, not tomorrow, Saturday. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a wide receiver too. And Mike Woods is, I think, the pick I'll take as well. He just, like you said, none of us, I mean, we know that he was a great receiver in the SEC. He was one of the best in that conference. So we do have high expectations of him, but I think we also had so much depth at that room that we kind of are blinded to how talented he really is. And right now he's listed as a starter. So he'll probably have the best game on the offensive side, but I mean, it's hard to say that Brandon is wrong in saying Eric Gray has to have a great game too, because one of those guys is going to solidify the number 1 spot. There's a lot of hype from him coming out of Tennessee.
I will say, how good is it that Eric Gray too, but shoot, Eric Gray and Mike Woods, the guys that we're all picking here to have to be the player of the game. How big is it right now, 3 days or 2 days out for the season, that they transferred to Oklahoma? Because without them,
especially Eric, imagine no Eric, we would literally just be stuck with Kennedy, and we'd have to hope
and Weatherman Jay.
Yeah, we'd have to hope Weatherman decides to step it up.
Yeah, and before we move or finish this up, I did kind of just check a few things on that defensive line. So for Tulane. So they've got actually two freshmen, because of COVID, starting on the ends. And then at nose tackle, they've got this guy named Jeffrey Johnson who had the 3.5 sacks.
Okay.
So you've got the linebacker and the defensive tackle that 4.5, 3.5, and then you've got two kind of unproven guys that I think each had like a half sack or a sack last year on the edges. So there's going to be a little bit of athleticism. One might get after Spencer Rattler one time, but you just never know with those young guys on the edges. They're starting for a reason as young guys.
And in all reality, 3.5 sacks at the defensive tackle position is not that bad. I mean, that's typically your DT is not supposed to be passing they're not, their number one job is not to get after the quarterback. It's kind of, stop the run and plug up holes and stuff like that. So 3.5 sacks at the DT spot. It's not it's not bad.
Well,
it's not bad.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, Perrion Winfrey had half a sack. I'm not saying this guy's better than Perrion, but
he's not. But yeah, so 3.5 sacks at DTs. That's pretty darn good.
So Congle's going to be challenged, or Rain. Hopefully, they're both available. They're going to be both challenged at the nose tackle position. So that actually might be
the whole offense.
Yeah, that might actually be something to watch with the nose tackle position, depending on who they line up, whether it's Chris Murray or Hayes or Congle or Rain, wherever they want to rush the gap. That might be something to watch. But That's probably actually where I'm going to be keeping my eye on, that interior of that offensive line.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, it's going to be a short leash for our line for Oklahoma. So if that defensive tackle can get after it, those guys are going to not have a very good halftime to walk into. So
let's do score predictions real quick.
Yeah, let's do it. So looking at a gambling site, we've got a couple of things here. So Oklahoma is favored by 31 points right now. The point total is predicted to be 67.5. What do you guys think what do you guys think? Just hearing those two numbers there.
I'm going to go under the total, over the 31. I have 55-10 Oklahoma.
55-10. Well, see, I've got it actually 56-17. So I'm going to take the OU minus 31 and then actually over the total. I think it'll be 49-10. Each team will get a garbage time touchdown, and that's how we're going to get the over on that.
Yeah, I think I actually am going with Brandon here. So we definitely covered 31. I think it'll be under the 65.5, just because our offense probably will not be as effective in the fourth quarter as they were in the first through third, especially because Caleb Williams will probably get probably quarter, like half, I guess the last bit of the second quarter or most of the third quarter. So we'll get to see, what he does, and we expect him to be great. So I don't think our offense will take a big dip when he's in, but it's when that QB3 is in where we're probably not going to be as effective scoring the ball.
Is it?
I think it's the
Ralph Rucker. Or what was it?
Penn State transfer is number 3?
No, Bowens is
not Micah Bowens.
It's Ralph Rucker, who's 3.
That take we had once upon a time about Micah Bowens starting in 2023 is not looking very hot right now.
It's dead.
He's gonna develop.
Yeah. So
all right. Cool. So I think we all think it's going to be a pretty convincing blowout, but it will be still a fun game to watch. Oklahoma's first game of the season and its home opener, first of 4 straight. So hopefully everything goes well. There's no injuries, and we just see a good game and some good stuff coming out of both sides of the Sooners football program this year. But do you guys have any last thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Just please be healthy. Just make it out with no injuries at this point.
Yes.
Definitely. So if you guys have made it this far, we really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Not just this video, but everything we've been putting out recently. We're excited for the football season. I'm sure like all of you are. So make sure you're subscribing.
I do have one last, just because it's the first game of the season. So we have to do it now. Otherwise, because we can't just make shit up later.
All right.
Season predictions. We have to make it right now. Lock it in stone before week 1.
For record-wise?
Record-wise, playoff, and how does the Sooner season end?
perfect season. Natty.
I agree.
It's perfect. It's going to be Oklahoma, and I think actually Georgia might be in there. Oklahoma and Georgia.
Hold on, so we're all picking the perfect season in a national championship?
Yeah, and I've been on Oklahoma and Georgia for a while. If you guys haven't seen that video, I think it's about 5 episodes back where we went through the schedule, a mock schedule. But yeah, it'll be a great season for the Sooners. But as I was saying, make sure you're subscribing. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up this season. We have some big stuff potentially coming in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you're subscribing, turning on that notification bell, and hit the like button because that helps us out a lot. And like I said, we really appreciate it. Yeah. If you guys, and make sure you're commenting because we're not 100% right, and we want to know what you guys think. And you're not hurting our feelings. Just throw it in there, and we will make sure to get back to you. But yeah, if you guys don't have anything else, it was good to talk to you guys, and we'll see you next time.